Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Paul.
And this is The Truth About.
Confusion filled sea of doubt. It's time to hear the truth about. Confusion filled sea of doubt. It's time to hear the truth about.
Racism. Black Lives Matter. I guess I just really want to be honest with this, this podcast kind of thing. It's kind of a little bit different, I guess, but the whole point is just to have a conversation, isn't it, about stuff that obviously matters and stuff that is awkward to talk about and things like that.
Yeah.
And I guess I just need to be really honest in saying that when the whole thing in America happened, I said to you, I was like, Laura, you've got to be careful with this.
Yeah, with George Floyd's murder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's just so much fear, obviously, with this, of being someone, obviously, with white privilege and all that kind of stuff. Is it even our place to comment on this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is because I guess it's just been for such a long time now that we have just been quietly anti-racist, obviously, but that's like not enough.
No.
It's like, and I feel like for the first time kind of in history, like we're given this platform now of actually like everyone should actually be talking about this, no matter what your color is, no matter what your race, no matter
Definitely.
whatever. But at the same time, it's not about us though.
No.
you can't make it about us or anything. This is about the cause, which is really liberating. And I even said, I was even like, I don't think we should do a podcast about it in case someone takes something out of context, in case of whatever. But it's like, we need to do that though.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it as well is that if we're uncomfortable and scared of talking about racism, imagine what the people who face it every day feel like.
Oh, exactly.
And it's better. I saw on Instagram someone say it's better to turn up and say the wrong thing potentially than to not turn up at all.
Exactly. So this is the main thing. But I think the difference is this time, it just seems so stupid that we're still talking. Well, we still have to talk about this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because from my ignorance, honestly, I was like, it's not happening as much anymore.
No.
Or like, we're so lucky to live in the UK where police are nice to everyone, but it's like when this happens again, you're like, I've just been living in ignorance, haven't I?
Yeah.
And that's bad.
And
that's why we need to keep the conversation going.
Definitely.
We need to keep talking about it, and hence the point of this podcast, really. If it needs any justification, which I hope it doesn't.
No.
Everyone needs to be talking about it. This isn't just a trend.
No.
That's the other thing as well. We need to keep talking about it.
And social media has definitely quietened down.
Yeah.
Everyone did their muting on Instagram and posted a lot of Black Lives Matter posts, which was amazing. But why should it stop?
No. And that's the thing. So obviously originally, I said to you, we shouldn't, we should be careful. We shouldn't, but I've totally done 360 on that anyway, and said, actually, I've been pushing for this podcast. We need to do it. So this is kind of the gist of it. Whether what we say is right or wrong, the intentions are good anyway. And as long as we keep talking about it is the main thing, really. I guess like growing up, I was lucky, if I can say that. I was lucky enough to be friends with and be in close contact with people of colour. So I wasn't brought up, there's always that fear where someone's brought up somewhere where they actually never even met anyone of a different culture and things like that. And I've met so many people in my life which is like that. They're not racist, but they've never even come into contact with anyone.
Not been exposed to it.
No, yeah. So that's always quite strange, isn't it? Because obviously, growing up close to London, you're used to it.
Yeah.
A multitude of different cultures and things like that. But my best friend was from India. My dad's best friend, my uncle Dave, which is kind of quite funny because he's a 6-foot black man from Jamaica. As a kid, you don't know any different. Like, that's not strange. You go to barbecues, you go to family events, you say, oh yeah, uncle. I'm always calling him uncle, Uncle Dave. But obviously from the outside, when you show people pictures and things like that, they say, well, that's strange.
Yeah.
He's not your real uncle though, is he? And yeah, well, he's like family friend, he's my uncle, that's what I
Yeah.
call him. But that's always the strange thing, if you like. But it kind of does just show the exposure, you know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
learn more about culture and all that kind of stuff. But that's an important thing that I was lucky to have been grown up with, kind of thing of,
Yeah.
of learning, loads of different kind of stuff or whatever. But the truth is that we will never know or experience racism firsthand, as we are born with white privilege. Obviously, we are both white. We come from white backgrounds.
Yep.
But we are merely just voyeurs of racism, aren't we? Like we're never, we never have a clue. That's the hardest part as well. And,
Yeah, it's one of those things that you'll never understand.
No.
And I'm happy to, keep trying.
Yeah.
Knowing that
exactly.
there is no end in sight.
Yeah.
Regarding that, because as you say, being a white person, I'm always going to have that privilege no matter what. And there's people that have got certain levels of power
Yeah.
that won't, if they're being black, won't even get half of the opportunities
No.
that someone who's not in any sort of, society,
Yeah.
that will be given stuff, on a silver platter.
It's kind of like that Louis Theroux documentary.
Yeah.
When we're obviously black nationalism, and he's talking to Al Sharpton, and Al Sharpton's saying, you have completely different like privileges to me in my own
my own neighborhood.
like I'm well known, I'm influential, but your kids can go to different schools than what my kids can, and all that kind of stuff. But it's mad thinking how long ago that was.
Yeah.
And to think because we obviously we watched that all the time because we were always watching Louis Theroux anyway.
Yeah.
But to actually think about that in context, you're like, that is
it could have been filmed now.
That is still unreal. Yes, the same people are still getting shot, and getting killed by the police and all this kind of stuff for not legitimate reasons, and not that anyone should get shot and killed for any reason.
Yeah,
Obviously.
and transgender people, women as well. But their names go unheard a lot of the time, and their deaths happen, and it's swept under the rug. It's not shown like George Floyd's death. Rightly or wrongly.
Yeah.
But it needs to be brought up and it needs to be said, because as soon as you go quiet and be like, right, okay, that's done now. These protests are over. We can stop talking about it and continue with our lives. And it's just not how it works. You've got to continue educating yourself and spreading awareness.
Yeah, like that's the honest thing though, isn't it? Like, I felt I've always been that person for such a long time because I felt that's what was only allowed for us, kind of thing, of actually just to be quietly just quietly anti-racist kind of thing, of going, well, that's stupid, why would someone, God, why would anyone judge anyone, for the colour of someone's skin or
I used to
culture.
think that I was actually quite vocal about it.
And
I was
you
vocal
always
to an
have been.
extent.
Yeah.
I grew up, and I think the first time I saw a person of colour, in my school, I was probably about 9 years old, and my first interaction was finding out that he'd come into our class and he'd been crying and saying that a boy in our class called him a name. A derogatory term, and that was my first lesson in racism. And from that point I pretty much was like, no, this is not cool. And I think, I can't remember the boy's heritage, so I'm not going to say because I don't want to get it wrong. But there was also a black boy in my school, and that one black boy. And then I went into secondary school and there was like 3 in the whole school. And you just see it as normal. Like, I didn't question it. I didn't question it either way. I didn't go, why aren't there more black people? Or why is there 3 black people? I didn't question it rightly or wrongly. And my only exposure to sort of racism was through things like Little Britain and Family Guy and South Park, all negative stereotypes.
Totally,
Whether you find it funny or not, that's a completely different subject.
Yeah.
But the reality is I learnt my lessons from that. I didn't have someone give me sit down and say, look, there's people from different countries, there's people with different cultures, and there's people with different skin colour.
Yeah.
They're all as equal and have a right to live and have the right privileges as you. Never learnt that.
But that's kind of similar to me. I mean, obviously I had lots of people from different cultures all at my primary school, secondary school, and all that kind of stuff. And obviously I grew up with different people, all this kind of stuff. But it was like, I think the first time when I was actually 12 or whatever, I watched this Jimi Hendrix documentary, and there was a part, I can't even remember the documentary, honestly, it was such a long time ago, but there was a part where the civil rights movement was happening, and Martin Luther King, and then Martin Luther King got assassinated, and then Hendrix played a special concert and all this kind of stuff, and that was the first time I actually thought, wow, that's remarkable kind of thing. And then I really spent the time to then educate myself when I was 12, learn about civil rights movement and learn about Martin Luther King. And
well what's also shocking is that I didn't actually learn about the civil rights movement until I took history GCSE. So it wasn't
a long time.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Yeah, so by the time I was 15, we started actually learning about civil rights movement, and that was the first formal lesson.
Yeah.
By which point it was a class that I had chosen to do. So there was so many other people that weren't learning about that, and we weren't even learning about British Black history or Black civil rights in the UK.
Yeah.
It was just America, Martin Luther King, the KKK, and things like that. And you do wonder at what point do you actually start educating children. And I think us now being parents, we're going to do it a lot younger.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say sit down and force Ava to learn about these horrible things, but just briefly introduce her to the fact that other cultures do exist, and Black people exist. And, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, it's not necessarily about that not other lives matter either, is it? That's been a big subject too, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the thing, and that was the next thing to go on to, really, of just obviously educating ourselves, and that's obviously something that me and you spent a lot of time doing.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's been the thing to be pushed. Everyone needs to actually educate themselves. Don't just say, well, we disagree with racism or whatever. Educate yourself. That's the kind of whole point. And obviously, one of the things I was looking into was microaggression. Now, microaggression, back in the 1970s, a Harvard University professor, Chester M. Pierce, a black man, coined the term microaggression to describe insults and slights he had witnessed against black people. So this is actually a really interesting subject, as the actions usually involving microaggression don't actually show themselves to be racist. You know what I mean? It's not something that would happen and someone goes, well, that person's out and out racist kind of thing. As we could potentially...
It's like subtle racism.
Yeah, it's kind of like... even just saying I don't see colour, I see everyone the same. That's a form of microaggression.
Yeah.
And
I used to be like that.
And yeah, exactly. I used to be like that. So and this is the whole thing of learning. This whole it's not ego's a huge part of this. To just go, wow, I've done some stupid stuff, or I thought in a certain way.
Or made stupid comments.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with then going back on that and then saying, well, actually...
I made a mistake.
Yeah. We need to say that person is a black person.
And I also think that what people need to do is actually ask black people.
Exactly.
Because we can go,
have awkward conversations we're doing now.
So many black people that I follow on Twitter have said, please don't say this. I'm very happy being a black woman.
Yeah.
I don't want to be called anything else.
No.
I'm black. I'm not coloured. I'm not, a person of colour. That's a group of, different ethnicities. I am a black person. You can call me that, and I have a history, and I'm not ashamed of it. And that's when I realised, actually, why have I been saying, I'm not identifying someone as being black.
Yeah.
When it comes to negative comments like, oh, did you see this black person, they did this? And they'd be like, what's that got to do with their color.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's
If you're
plenty of white people.
yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
If you're
There's plenty of
describing
white
how
people.
somebody looks,
Yeah,
you know, you would probably distinguish their ethnicity
yeah.
to make someone, you know, to describe them as more distinguishable. Because let's be honest, loads of white people in the room, they all look the same. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things of obviously another example of microaggression could be like someone checking their wallet when a black person walks by them, or obviously any person of color kind of thing, you know. So like that's obviously a red flag, isn't it? So it's not something totally out and out racist, but it's a small little act.
Yeah, you're
that is obviously
putting someone in a stereotype
Exactly.
based on a negative perception from somebody else.
yeah.
Like, it's not even necessarily a fact. It's
But-
that a crime rate happens with a particular race. It could just be that that's how you've been conditioned.
I mean, this is quite funny because obviously how I started off this episode of I can't be racist as I have black friends. You know, like I've
Yes.
got black friends growing up and all this kind of stuff. But that's another microaggression.
Yeah.
You know, how you can just assume you know what someone's going through because you're a friend of theirs.
I think a lot of elderly people use that as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a very common one. Or, you know, like, well, as a woman, I've had similar hardships in my life, you know, kind of thing. But it's tricky. You know, it is tricky. But we've both fully immersed ourselves, obviously, into learning more about Black history. Obviously, you're reading books and things like that. Is there anything you want to talk about that you've learned, or, you know, even just from Instagram or anything like that, you know, which...
I think a lot of the things that I have started to be a bit concerned about in regards to the Black Lives Matter is people damaging the cause.
Yeah.
So as opposed to, obviously I'm all for peaceful protests.
Yeah.
That's, you know, the better option than violence.
Yeah.
However, when the statues of slave traders started being pulled down, I believe that was the right thing to do, because I understand why you would do that. When things started getting violent and people were attacking each other, attacking the police, that's when you start going, is this right? Are you making this yourself heard, or are you making it detrimental?
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is a big thing, obviously, within the history of the civil rights movement, of actually the various people, obviously leaders, you know, within the various movements who have obviously had different opinions on this. Obviously, you know, it should be, you know, sit down protests, it should be this, it should be that. And obviously from the flip side of it, you know, we've had that time and it hasn't worked, therefore let's now take action. Let's now but one of the important things, because I've had the same questions, the same, you know, debates with myself, if you like, you know, on the internet with Google and all this kind of stuff. But one of the poignant things I read is like, it's not up to you to decide how I'm gonna, you know, choose my fate. It's just such a frustrating thing that we are still talking about this. It's still such a frustrating thing that people still aren't getting it.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that happened was when an episode of Fawlty Towers was pulled.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, oh, people being oversensitive. And I don't think they actually realised that the N-word was used in that episode. They think it was just because it's mocking the Germans.
Yeah.
No, that is actually funny, dare I say it. That is funny. Fawlty Towers is funny.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, it makes fun of certain stereotypes, but it's not done in a malicious way.
No.
But using the N-word, uncalled for.
Yeah.
I don't see there ever being any excuse to ever use that.
No.
So that was the reason why. And I don't think many people understood that. And I think people think that it's now a snowflake society.
Yeah.
Which you're just
political correctness gone mad and all that kind of stuff.
It's like, well, since when is racism up for debate?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go too heavy.
No.
I don't want to go too heavy because I think we just both end up being really angry. And maybe that's what's needed. I'm not sure. You know, that's the hardest bit, isn't it? You just don't know what's needed just to
Ignorance
get it.
is bliss.
You just don't know what this needs, what this cause needs, just to make people just be aware of it and just to change society. But that's kind of the biggest thing, isn't it? Like, in reality, this isn't going to change overnight. You know what I
No.
mean? And that's why I think it is important for the education to be educating our children, obviously to bringing it into schools, you know, so that we are made of, like you said. I mean, I came into this at 12 years old and I learnt it from Jimi Hendrix. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's quite random really that, you know, Jimi Hendrix taught me how to play guitar as well as obviously taught me about racism. But, you know...
Was it up to Jimi Hendrix to do that?
Well, exactly, yeah. Like, you know, we should be talking about it in primary school, you know, and...
With our families as well.
Yeah, totally.
I've been educating my grandmother.
Well, yeah, and that's been amazing to see, you know, and yeah, but yeah, like you say, just generationally, you know, we need to make the changes and all that
And hope for a better future.
Exactly. So,
and then we can start that now.
Yeah, exactly. So, like we said, in the Truth About blog.co.uk, we post about the ways in which we can help the cause and you know. And
some useful links with places where you can donate,
yeah,
sign petitions,
yeah,
and yeah, to basically and where certain protests and marches may be happening. Just obviously be safe if you're doing that.
Yeah,
and keep sharing it. Don't stop talking about it.
No, that's the main thing.
Racism will never end.
No.
And it's something that we, this generation, and you know, previous generations and future can do to try and help people now, and not just in the future. This isn't something that we are concerned about. Oh, in 100 years' time, there'll be no racism. We want it to start now. I wanted it to start hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, just try and do your bit as much as you possibly can.
Confusion filled sea of doubt. It's time to hear the truth about confusion filled sea of doubt. It's time to hear the truth about